Pokemon Unite esports is changing, and some people are saying it's not for the better. What's up, guys? Nintendo Jab here, back with a brand new video. And yeah, for those that are out of the loop, there has been a lot of controversy in regards to Pokemon Unite esports, going back to, I believe it was August 16th, August 17th, during the Pokemon World Championships. There was some drama going on with the Pokemon Unite World Championships due to some technical issues that it seems like players were experiencing, or at least a player was experiencing, particularly with their phone basically not wanting to connect and them not being able to play the match and stuff. And unfortunately, all these technical issues led to Pokemon taking a pretty drastic change in the middle of the tournament, where they basically said, okay, you guys that are using your phones to play Unite right now for the championship, you guys are not going to be able to use your devices anymore. You have to use the devices that Pokemon themselves are going to be providing. And this is something that they did in the middle of the tournament, and it caused a lot of upset in the pro community, particularly, of course, those pro players that were basically complaining that these devices that they now had to play on, they were not familiar with, they weren't as good as their own personal devices and stuff. It was just this whole controversial thing, and there was a lot of online discourse about it, especially on places like X or Twitter, whichever you would like to call it. And yeah, it was a pretty crazy situation, and ultimately it was something that was obviously very unfortunate for the players that had to switch to a device that they were just completely unfamiliar with. Obviously that was going to hinder them and not basically let them play at the absolute best that they could at this World Championship for Pokemon Unite, where there's a lot of money on the line and stuff like that. A lot of these players flew into California just to be able to participate, so it was a very, very big deal. And now here we are, almost 2 weeks later, after the whole World Championships event and stuff, and the official Pokemon Unite esports page basically went ahead and gave us an update talking a little bit about the situation that happened, and also what they're going to be doing going forward so that they don't have this happen again. So here is the actual announcement that they went ahead and showed. As we can see, it says review of tournament operation policies for Unite in 2026. And they basically go ahead to talk a little bit about what happened in the 2025 Pokemon World Championships that took place again August 15th through 17th. And they're basically acknowledging the feedback that they got, as well as the whole issue with the just in the middle of the tournament, the device changes and stuff like that. And that leads them to the part of the announcement where they basically announced their future plans for the 2026 Pokemon World Championships for Unite, and basically, I guess, going forward beyond that as well. As we can see here, these 3 bullet points, it says all participants will compete using devices provided by the tournament organizers. For players competing on smartphones, tournament organizers will supply devices with sufficient hardware specifications to support optimal gameplay, and device information will be confirmed at least 75 days before the 2026 World Championships. Now, this announcement here is the kind of controversial part. A lot of pro players on Twitter right now are just completely against these changes, because a lot of them basically are making the argument that they have spent a lot of money on their own personal devices in order to play Pokemon Unite, in order to make content on it and practice for tournaments and stuff like that. So they want to be able to use their devices. These devices are essentially investments to them, and they want to be able to use them. And then even beyond that, they're just used to using these particular devices, whatever it is that, the device that they use, whether it's an iPhone, whether it's an Android, whatever it might be, they're just used to it. So obviously they're going to be able to perform the best on the device that they are used to using. And now with these changes, they're not going to be able to do that. They might practice for most of the year on an iPhone, and then when they show up to the tournament, they have to use a Samsung Galaxy, S whatever series is out at the particular time or something. And obviously it's going to be different. The feel of the phone, the weight of the phone, the latency when it comes to touching the screen and stuff, everything could potentially be different. And it's kind of why I think a lot of pro players are against these changes. On the flip side, however, from the perspective of the Pokemon Company, the Unite tournament organizers and stuff like that, I think these are actually good changes that will potentially minimize technical issues with the actual World Championships and with the live stream itself and stuff. If you haven't watched the live stream for the Pokemon Unite World Championship series, you'll notice that sometimes they basically pause the actual matches for like up to 30 minutes sometimes, because they're dealing with these technical issues. And based off of what Spraggles, who I'm sure most of you have heard of, biggest Unite content creator there is, he has also casts some of these events and stuff, and he has said from his perspective that 99% of the time when there's a technical issue happening, it's because of someone's personal phone. So it seems like they're trying to crack down on this issue and basically minimize all these technical issues and just kind of keep a little bit of that game integrity as well. I'm actually very surprised that players were allowed to use their own personal devices, just because they have no idea what is on that device. Of course, you have no idea if they're I'm sure they have some type of security protocol or checkup or something, but what if a player potentially has cheats or hacks or scripts or something like that? There's a lot of variables, I think, and so I'm just really surprised that they actually allowed people to use their own personal devices for this long. And obviously now they're changing that, and going forward they're going to have to use actual tournament devices. But again, it's something that I'm surprised, kind of took this long to even happen. When you look at other esports and stuff, those players aren't taking their personal computers or their personal gaming laptops to play in the tournament. They're using a device that was provided to them by the tournament organizer. At most, they're using their own mouse and keyboard or something like that, but obviously you can't really implement that in Unite since this is a mobile game and a Nintendo Switch game. So yeah, it's a really crazy situation, but I do think that with these changes overall, I do think that it is going to allow Unite esports to have just a little bit more game integrity, just because you're not going to really have to worry about someone potentially cheating or anything like that. It's going to allow for there to be less technical issues, which means the overall tournament is going to go along a lot smoother and stuff. And it also just kind of makes it fair for everyone, since they are going to have to be playing all on a uniform device, or at least like a list of devices depending on how Pokemon does this. Everyone is going to be on an even playing field. There's not really going to be a situation where someone is playing with the kind of low to mid-range device versus another team that has like the absolute best Android gaming phone out at the moment or anything like that. Everyone's going to be on an even playing field, and I think that's a good thing, as long as Pokemon does, like they mentioned, as long as they do choose smartphones that are sufficient enough when it comes to the hardware, when it comes to playing the game at a solid 60 FPS and all that stuff, because that was one of the big complaints with the 2025 World Championships. People were saying that the provided phones could barely hold like 30 FPS in Unite, which is obviously not great. And so as long as the phones that they provide are able to actually play the game sufficiently and reliably, then I think this is a good change. They did mention that pro players are going to have at least 75 days before the World Championships in 2026 to know what exact device they're going to be competing on. That way they can maybe, rent one, buy one, get familiar with it and stuff like that. Hopefully they do announce it as soon as possible though. Hopefully they don't actually wait until 75 days before the tournament. That way players can have the most time possible to get used to the official device and stuff. Because obviously, the World Championship's not going to be happening again until next year. A lot of these pro players are still going to continue to play Pokemon Unite every day and stuff. And the more time that passes where the official device is not announced, that's just more time or less time, I should say, that they have getting familiar with the official device of 2026 World. So yeah, hopefully they do announce that as soon as possible. But overall, I actually think this is a good thing for the growth of Pokemon Unite esports and for the just fair environment that obviously we would want in an actual official esports for Pokemon Unite. A super crazy situation. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below if you have any thoughts on this, whether this is a good change, bad change. Definitely interested in seeing some different perspectives on this, because again, like I mentioned, based off some of the stuff I saw on Twitter and stuff, it seems like it's just kind of like very divisive. Some people are very for it, and some people seem to be very, very much against it. I can kind of see both sides, but I think overall this is going to be a positive change. Yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't. We're on that grind to our first 1,000 subscribers, pushing out that Pokemon Unite content every single week and stuff. So yeah, if you guys could help out with that 1K before the end of this year, that would be really, really cool. And I promise to give you guys regular Pokemon Unite content in exchange. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.